In 2007, university student Jiro is spending his birthday alone as usual. He starts by buying a gift for himself at the mall, and that's when he sees a beautiful girl walking around the clothing store wearing a strange silver suit. This girl won't stop staring and smiling at him, and after she gets some new clothes, she even follows him on the street. Moments later, Jiro goes to the same restaurant he visits every year to have noodles because his grandmother had taught him having noodles on your birthday would bless you with a long life. While he's eating, the girl shows up and sits at his table, where she orders a bunch of dishes for herself. A group of students at another table is celebrating a guy's birthday by smashing his face on the cake, and this prompts the girl to admit it's her birthday as well. After she and Jiro congratulate each other, the waiter brings all the dishes she ordered, and Jiro can only watch in shock how the girl eats absolutely everything without hesitation. The final bill is quite expensive, but the girl promises to take care of it and sends Jiro outside. But seconds later, Jiro learns that the girl's method is to run without paying. The pair runs downtown, where they steal a couple of apples from a seller's basket to enjoy the juicy taste, but their glee is interrupted when the waiter shows up and sends a cop after them. The chase begins again, and this time, Jiro and the girl sneak inside a theater to steal some costumes. While the cop mistakenly chases after a pair of actors, Jiro and the girl get to escape safely. Eventually the pair goes to Jiro's apartment, where the girl throws a rock at Jiro's window before she begins crying. She explains it was on this balcony that a guy kissed her before saying he didn't like her anymore, that she ate too much, acted crazy, and that he didn't want to see her again. Jiro assumes she means someone that lived there before him and stops her from throwing more rocks before taking her out for a walk in order for her to calm down. Sometime later, it's time for the girl to go, so she asks Jiro to close his eyes because she doesn't want him to see her leave. First though, she gives him a cute little red keychain, which she had bought for herself on her birthday, and in return Jiro gives her the anime figurine he had bought for his own gift. As the girl finally starts to leave, she confesses she came from the future in a time machine, and once she's far enough, she changes her mind and asks Jiro to open his eyes so he could see her smile. For some reason, this feels like déjà vu to Jiro, and it makes him cry. 1 year later in 2008, Jiro's celebrating his birthday on his own again and hopes he may see the girl once more. Meanwhile, in the middle of the city, a flash of lightning hits the streets and makes the girl appear in her silver suit again. However, this time she's acting pretty different, her movements are stiff and her eyes are glowing. As she walks down the block, she comes across 3 thugs that try to harass her, but she surprises them by displaying a variety of powers that she uses to beat them up, like super strength, super speed, and sharp hair. After asking one of the thugs for the date, the girl goes to the mall to steal some shoes and clothes. When the clerks try to stop her, she knocks them out with tasting vision, and when a cop comes after her, she pretends to be a mannequin on display. Afterward, she steals a cake and some flowers before rushing to the restaurant where Jiro is having his usual noodles to surprise him with the gifts. Jiro's very happy to see her, but he quickly gets confused when he notices how stiff and awkward her mannerisms are. Remembering the group of students they saw last year, the girl pushes Jiro's face into the cake, but before he can protest, something shocking happens. One of the clients turns out to be a crazy shooter that begins firing his weapon all over the restaurant. The girl seems to be expecting this and moves Jiro out of the bullet's way before approaching the shooter and beating him up. After throwing the criminal out the window and making him catch on fire with his own cigarette and the gasoline he had brought for his plans, the girl takes Jiro back to his apartment, where she breaks the padlock to get inside and uses her eyes to play a recording sent by a Jiro from 65 years in the future, who looks absolutely horrible. In his timeline, this Jiro was hurt by the shooter in the restaurant, but thanks to a lottery ticket he bought earlier, he became rich. All the money he won was spent on creating Cyborg 103, who was modeled after the girl Jiro met on his 2007 birthday and is programmed to become more human the more she learns and lives with him. Future Jiro sent her back in time to save this other Jiro from the shooter and to keep him safe from an incoming disaster, but he doesn't specify what. After the recording is over, Jiro wonders if 103 is capable of getting intimate, for which gets tased as punishment. Then, 103 meets Jiro's pet Raoul the iguana, which she finds very peculiar. The next morning, to Jiro's shock, 103 ends up cooking Raoul for breakfast. From then on, Jiro and 103 start living together, and 103 helps Jiro as much as she can. When he's late for classes, she carries him to the university building using her super speed. She also scares the teacher into not throwing chalk at his students anymore. She goes with Jiro everywhere, even when he hangs out with fellow students, and also continues to eat a lot, but trying alcohol proves to be a mistake because it makes her malfunction. Jiro works as a cashier in a fast food restaurant, where 103 sits at a table while keeping an eye on him and stealing food from customers. One afternoon, a kid crosses the street with bad timing and Jiro almost has to watch the child get hit by a vehicle, but 103 rushes out of the restaurant using her super speed to save the kid just in time. Life continues as usual for Jiro, although it's much better now with 103's help. She records his classes, helps him with any little problem he may have, and refuses to take the bed option for falling into sleep mode while standing near the window for extra safety. In return, Jiro buys her food, lots of cute outfits, and teaches her how to have fun. One morning, Jiro wakes up to find 103 covered in ash, but she doesn't explain why. He quickly gets his answer when he turns on the TV and watches the news, which shows a bunch of kids that were saved from a fire by a mysterious hero. Afterward, 103 asks Jiro to visit his hometown. Jiro doesn't see the point because his village had been razed by an earthquake when he was young, but 103 insists he should do it anyway, explaining old Jiro from the other timeline regretted never going back when he died of old age. Met with the idea of how fragile life is, Jiro begins crying and accepts to go. 103 takes him there on a bus that does something funny on the way, and she makes him promise not to speak to anyone in the village once they arrive. Jiro is shocked to find his hometown exactly as he remembers it, including the people. His friends still look like kids and the old people are still alive. Keeping his mouth shut as promised, Jiro enjoys watching the traditional festival and eventually sees himself as a child, finally understanding that 103 has brought him back in time. He also gets to see his first Raoul, who was a cat, and his grandmother, who raised him as his own kid. Later in life, Jiro learned that his grandmother was actually his mother, but she had him as an older woman, so she pretended to be his grandmother to avoid the scandal. Little Jiro is hiding a time capsule in the garden, thus present Jiro recovers it to find a family picture with a message from his younger self reminding him to become a great scientist. Thinking about messages from the future, Jiro asks 103 to tell his older self thank you when she returns, and while 103 accepts, she looks sad and hesitant. At the end of the trip, 103 gives Jiro a piggy ride the same way his grandmother used to. He isn't sure if it was because of 103's cold back or the side effects of time traveling, but when Jiro returns home, he's feeling sick and must stay in a hospital for a while. 103 stays by the window in this room the same way she used to do at home, and as Jiro watches her, he realizes he's starting to fall in love with her. One morning, Jiro turns on the news and watches how 103 saves a group of teachers and students from a mad shooter that broke into a school to take hostages. When 103 returns to the hospital room, Jiro hugs her as thanks, and 103 finally explains why she keeps saving people. The kid on the street, the fire, and this school shooter were all deaths that future Jiro had to watch and left a very painful mark on him, so he asked 103 to save present Jiro from having to go through to the same. In the evening, the pair returns home and while watching the stars on the balcony, Jiro kisses 103. She doesn't mind, but she admits she doesn't feel anything either, which makes Jiro angry and he refuses to try again when 103 offers. Later when 103 has entered sleep mode, Jiro apologizes to her, but he's still unsure of what to do. He knows he shouldn't expect human things from her, but he wishes that if she can't express love, she would at least say she can feel his heart. Living with 103 while being in love with her becomes very frustrating for Jiro and his feelings, so he decides to go dancing with another girl to try to make her jealous. This ends up backfiring on him because a guy asks 103 to dance with him instead, and since 103 is so good at doing the robot, she gets the attention of everyone in the club, thus Jiro becomes the jealous one in the end. Irritated, Jiro leaves the club with his dancing partner, telling her 103 is his bodyguard to avoid the girl minding the cyborg following them everywhere. When Jiro kisses this girl, he's slapped for being too forward with someone he just met, and this triggers 103 into coming to his defense. She throws the girl into a water fountain, explaining it's because she hit Jiro, but Jiro accuses 103 of being jealous. He's quite drunk at the moment and not thinking straight, so after throwing up on the floor, he asks 103 to stop following him. He's tired of how much she eats, how hard she hits, and he doesn't like her anymore, meaning he doesn't want to see her ever again. For his final goodbye, Jiro makes 103 close her eyes in order for him to leave without her knowing where. The following morning, Jiro regrets everything he said and blames it on the alcohol, but he can't apologize because 103 isn't around anymore. His life becomes boring once more, and his teacher can now bully him again because nobody will protect him. Jiro can't stop missing 103 all the time, especially when he notices the details she left behind, like bringing Raoul the cat from the past so Jiro can have a new pet. One afternoon, a very strong earthquake hits the city. As Jiro's building starts crumbling down, he thinks he's going to die, but 103 appears just in time to save him. Jiro hugs her as thanks, expressing how much he's missed her, but there's no time for feelings. They need to reach a safe place because the whole city is being utterly destroyed. As they run away, 103 makes sure to keep Jiro safe, even pushing away a truck when one almost runs over them. However, when a building falls down, it's too much weight for even 103, and after pushing Jiro away she ends up trapped under all the debris. Jiro falls into a crater and barely manages to hold onto a broken pipe to avoid death, but 103 can hear his pleas for help and decides to pull a desperate tactic to save him. Since she can't take her whole body out from under the debris, she breaks it in two and drags the upper half through the ground to reach the crater. Thankfully, she still has enough strength left to pull Jiro up and save him, but this isn't over yet. Jiro needs to leave without her because it's too dangerous. Jiro refuses, but after admitting she can indeed feel his heart, 103 pushes him away again before more debris falls on top of her. Having no other choice, Jiro goes away, and he doesn't return until sometime later when the area has been secured and all the citizens are coming back to see if they can recover any belongings. Jiro digs around until he can find what is left of 103, who isn't working anymore, but he doesn't care. Like the Jiro from the other timeline, this one wins the lottery as well, and he dedicates his life to rebuilding 103. 61 years later, Jiro is an old man in a much better condition than his alternate self because he never was a victim of the shooter, and not only he rebuilds 103 with her memories and her ability to feel his heart, but he also builds 3 more like her. When Jiro dies of old age, 103 is sent to a museum. Years later, in 2133, 103 is seen at the museum by the girl from the beginning of the story. She can't understand why a random cyborg from 60 years ago looks like her, so when the museum holds an auction, the girl buys 103, who comes with a red keychain that Jiro had. Then, the girl transfers 103's memories to her own mind, learning about everything that happened with Jiro and making her want to meet him. After buying a permission to time travel, the girl travels all the way back to 2007, explaining the first birthday Jiro saw her, because she wanted to meet him before the cyborg would change his life. Seeing the city and the culture before it was hit by the earthquake is quite a shock for her, and it explains why the girl asks for lots of dishes and steals apples, since in the future food isn't this delicious anymore. Spending time with Jiro makes the girl fall in love with him and fall deep into synchronization with 103's memories. This is why on the balcony she gets angry and throws rocks at Jiro's windows. She's hurt by the time Jiro sent her away saying he doesn't like her anymore. When the time comes for her to leave, she makes Jiro close his eyes because she doesn't want to see her cry. She also gives him the red keychain to bring the gift chain to a full circle. As she leaves, she starts realizing going back to the future would mean living in a time when Jiro is dead, so instead she travels to the day of the earthquake, finding Jiro clinging to what is left of 103. The girl decides to stay here to live with Jiro and feel his heart, kicking off the start of a third timeline. Hey, thanks for watching. May God bless you. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon. Meet you in the next video.